5 years at the same desk, and the rhythm of it still pulled me in like the steady pull of a river current. I'd glance over during our morning coffee run, her hand steady on the cardboard cup, steam rising in the cool office air. That's when my breath would catch, not on the steam, but on the quiet focus in her eyes, the way she scanned the room like she was mapping every shadow. We'd been partners in this small world, desks pushed close enough to share a keyboard cord. But lately, that familiarity twisted into something unspoken, a pull like a shadow lengthening across the floor at dusk, unnoticed until it touched your boot. The office was a tight space, walls thin with whispers, and the pressure was building. A big project deadline looming, clients breathing down our necks. Crossing that line felt like stepping into a canyon with no way back. One wrong word, and everything could echo wrong. We'd fallen into it easy, those 5 years side by side. Mornings started with the click of the office door and her footsteps approaching, reliable as the sunrise over the ridge. She'd slide into her chair, the wheels humming soft against the carpet, and we'd divvy up the inbox without a word. Shared coffee runs became our ritual, me grabbing the mugs from the break room sink, her pouring from the pot that always tasted faintly of yesterday's grounds. Her handwriting on the notes she left for me was steady, loops even like she'd measured them with a ruler, a quiet anchor when the emails piled up. I started noticing the small things, the way her fingers would tap a slow rhythm on the desk edge during long calls, nails short and practical, echoing the distant hum of the air conditioner. It cut through the stale printer ink that hung in the air, but what lingered stronger was the plain soap on her skin, clean, like fresh linen after a rain, slipping under the fluorescent buzz. I'd catch myself pausing mid-sentence, pretending to check a file, just to watch the light catch the edge of her jaw as she concentrated. Comfort built slow, like stacking cordwood against winter. Late nights when the office emptied, we'd divide tasks, her taking the reports, me the projections, heads bent close over the shared screen, the glow casting blue shadows on our faces. Laughter came easy over the absurdities, the boss's endless memos about synergy, or the way the vending machine jammed on her favorite granola bar every third try. She'd nudge my elbow then, a quick press of warmth, and say something dry like, "Next time, we'll bribe it with quarters." Those moments stacked up, year after year, turning the desk into a shared territory, safe and worn in. But the air thickened one afternoon, the kind of heavy quiet before a storm rolls in off the plains. The project deadline loomed, a client report that could make or break our quarter, and the emails started sharpening, demands stacking like thunderheads. We'd been pulling extra hours, the office lights harsh against the darkening windows, and I felt the shift in her. The tap of her fingers quicker, her notes shorter. It was just work, I told myself. But the pull sharpened too, that shadow stretching longer, brushing against the edges of what we'd built. Those routines held us steady through the early days. Back when we first got paired, the office felt like a foreign land. Cubicles like boxcars on an endless track, voices echoing off the white walls. She made it bearable. Her coffee was always black, no sugar, handed over with a nod that said we were in this together. We'd sync our breaks, walking the hallway like it was a trail, her steps measured beside mine. The scent of her soap would drift when she leaned to point at a spreadsheet error, cutting the ink and paper dust, grounding me. Observations piled up unnoticed at first. During team calls, her fingers would tap, 3 quick beats, then pause, like Morse code for patience. I'd mirror it sometimes, our rhythm syncing without trying. Evenings stretched when deadlines bit, us the last ones in, chairs creaking as we shifted. Laughter broke the tension. Once, over a client's ridiculous font request, she snorted and said, "They want Comic Sans for a merger? Might as well draw it in crayon." I laughed till my sides ached, the sound bouncing off the empty desks, pulling us closer without her touch. That comfort deepened. We'd trade stories in whispers, her about weekend hikes up the canyon trails, me about the quiet of my apartment porch at dusk. No deep secrets, just enough to fill the gaps. Her handwriting became familiar as my own. Notes tucked under my keyboard. Check collar, B off by 2%. steady, like her. Then that afternoon hit. The project files sprawled across our desks, deadline circled in red on the calendar. Air felt thick, her taps erratic. I caught her rubbing her temples, eyes shadowed. Something was building, and not just the work. The shifts came quiet, like cracks in dry earth after a freeze. After that afternoon, I started seeing her differently, noticing the tired pull at the corners of her eyes after long meetings, the way shadows gathered there under the harsh lights. We'd wrap up a conference call, her voice steady through the speaker, and when she hung up, I'd catch that weariness, the faint crease between her brows. My hand would twitch, an urge to reach over, brush the stray hair from her face where it clung after she rubbed her temple. But I held back, fingers curling into my palm instead. Boundaries kept us in line, sharp as the edge of a file folder. We'd share digital files, folders syncing with a click, but never the deeper stuff. No shared secrets spilling over coffee, just polite distances like the space between our chairs. She'd ask about my weekend in passing, voice light, and I'd answer with the safe parts. The walk by the river, the quiet of leaves turning. Nothing about the ache that started creeping in, how her laugh in the break room echoed longer in my head. We were colleagues, desks partners in the grind, and that line felt like a fence post driven deep. Cross it, and the whole pasture shifts. Tension built inside me first, a slow, coil-like wire tightening under strain. Nights blurred, dreams slipping work into want, her hand guiding mine over a keyboard, turning into something warmer, her breath close as we leaned into a screen. I'd wake with a start, sheets twisted, her name on the tip of my tongue, unspoken in the dark of my apartment. The city hummed outside, distant horns like echoes of office chatter, but all I felt was that pull, sharpening with each morning glance across the desk. Her soap scent would hit me then, cutting the stale air, and I'd bury it down, focusing on the inbox glow. It wasn't just me. The office started showing strain too. Small fractures in the routine. That team meeting hit like the first gust before a windstorm. Boss calling us in, chairs scraping as we settled around the table. She presented her section, voice clear, laying out the data points with that steady hand on the projector remote. The boss nodded, eyes lighting up, praising her angles, her insights, like she'd mapped the whole terrain alone. I sat there, my notes untouched, feeling sidelined, the words I'd prepped sticking in my throat. Her glance flicked my way, quick and apologetic, but the room moved on without me, her ideas carrying the weight. It stung, not just the oversight, but the way it highlighted us. Her rising, me steady in the shadow. After, back at our desks, the air felt heavier, her taps on the keys a little sharper. I wanted to say something, bridge the gap, but the words stayed locked. Instead, we dove back in, screens side by side, the project files pulling us tighter. Deadlines pressed, client calls stacking, and preparation meant more hours, heads bent closer over revisions. Her explanations came low, patient, unraveling the knots in the numbers. And each time, that warmth brushed near, shoulder to shoulder, the space shrinking. The cracks widened, unnoticed by anyone else, but I felt them spidering out, threatening to split the ground beneath us. Those observations turned sharper, like honing a blade on whetstone. In the quiet after lunch, when the office thinned, I'd watch her sort through papers, the faint scar on her knuckle catching the light, a mark from some old cut, maybe a kitchen slip or a hike gone wrong. The urge to trace it grew, fingers itching across the desk divide. But professionalism clamped down, a cold weight in my chest. We'd exchange files verbally, too, her saying, "Page 7 needs a cross-check," voice even, eyes not quite meeting mine. No secrets, just the surface skim, like walking the edge of a cliff without looking down. Dreams worsened, bleeding into days. One night, she was there, in the conference room haze, our argument dissolving into her hand on my arm, pulling me close amid the empty chairs. Woke, sweating, name half-formed, the apartment walls closing in like cubicle partitions. Mornings, I'd arrive early, coffee cooling as I waited for her step, that pull like a rope fraying at the edges. The meeting lingered, a splinter under skin. Boss's favor tilted things, her workload easing while mine piled, resentment flickering low. She noticed, offered to split a task, her hand brushing the mouse, electric, brief. I nodded, throat tight, the strain pulling us into the project's heat, preparations demanding we lean in, closer than before. The project pulled us in deep after that meeting, like a current dragging under the surface. We'd huddle over spreadsheets, screens split between us, her cursor darting to highlight the errors I'd missed in the haze of numbers. Her voice came low then, explaining the fixes. Patient, threading through the columns like a needle pulling taut stitch after stitch. See here, she'd say, leaning in, the words close enough to feel the warmth of her breath on my ear. It wasn't just data. It was her breaking it down, unraveling the knots I'd tied myself into. Her logic, steady as a hand on a rein. Proximity turned sharp, unavoidable in the desk's narrow span. Shoulders would brush as we adjusted to the shared mouse, a quick press of fabric and bone that sent heat lingering, like a held breath in cold air. I'd freeze for a beat, pretending to scan the formula, but the warmth seeped through my shirt, pooling low in my chest. The office hummed around us, phones buzzing distant, chairs creaking from other cubicles. But in that space, it narrowed to the slide of her sleeve against mine, the faint shift of her weight as she pointed. Once, reaching for the same stapler, our knuckles grazed, and the metal clattered soft, but neither pulled away fast enough. Her eyes flicked up, holding mine a second too long, the fluorescent glare catching the fleck of green in one iris I'd never clocked before. Under it all ran the emotional currents, pulling stronger with each revision. Doubts crept in for me, the boss's favor still stinging, my contributions feeling like echoes in a canyon. And she'd sense it, her hand pausing mid-type. "You're solid on this," she'd murmur, voice cutting the doubt like a knife through fog, making me feel seen in the relentless light overhead. It wasn't praise thrown light. It landed heavy, her gaze steady, pulling me back from the edge. In those moments, the grind softened, her encouragement wrapping around the tension like vines on a fence post, holding it from snapping. I'd nod, throat tight, and dive back in. But the feeling stuck, a quiet ache blooming where her words landed. Stress mounted from outside, client demands escalating like wind whipping up dust devils. Emails flooded in, timelines shrinking, their notes red-flagged and urgent. Revise by EOD, or incorporate these metrics now. We'd scramble, overtime stretching evenings thin, the office emptying while we stayed, windows black mirrors reflecting our bent heads. The clock ticked past 6, then 7, the air growing stale with cooling coffee and the faint ozone from the printers running overtime. Her taps on the keys quickened, matching the knot in my gut, and we'd trade off reading aloud the feedback, voices low to not echo in the quiet. One night, the client's call came late, her on speaker, me scribbling notes, the demands piling like rocks in a washout. When it ended, she rubbed her neck, muscles taut under her fingers. And I wanted to take over, knead the strain out, but settled for passing her water bottle, our fingers brushing again. Deliberate this time. Or maybe not. That closeness fed the undercurrents, turning collaboration into something charged. We'd map the presentation slides side by side, her suggesting a pivot on the visuals, me arguing for more data depth, voices overlapping in the dimming light. Her encouragement came unasked during my low points. Trust your read on this. It's what they need. It hit deep. The fluorescence harsh, but her focus softer, pulling me into her orbit. The warmth from those brushes lingered longer, shoulders aligning as we sync the charts, breath sinking too in the rhythm of our work. External pressures didn't let up. Another client volley hit midweek, attachments heavy with revisions, deadlines slashed to hours. We burned through the evening, desks littered with printouts, her handwriting slashing corrections in the margins. The office felt vast and empty, our corner the only lit spot, shadows pooling under the conference table across the way. Her voice grew edged on the last call, defending our draft, and when she hung up, the silence thudded heavy. "We'll get it," she said, but her eyes carried the weight, and mine met them, the pull tightening like wire around a post. Those nights blurred, the project's heat forging us closer, every fix a step into uncharted ground. Her low explanations became lifelines, the proximity a constant hum, emotional threads weaving through the stress. But as the demands peaked, whispers started circling, office politics surfacing, rumors of shifts in the team, testing the quiet alliance we'd carved out at our desks. The whispers turned to murmurs by midweek, office politics slithering through the halls like smoke from a distant brush fire. Rumors of restructuring, the boss eyeing cuts to trim the fat, and our project suddenly felt like the linchpin. Succeed, and we'd anchor the team. Fail, and fingers would point straight at our desks. We dove into presentation prep, the high-stakes kind, where every slide could tip the balance. The floor emptied early that Friday, colleagues bolting for the weekend, leaving us alone with the hum of the projector and stacks of notes fanned across the conference table. We'd dragged our laptops in, cords snaking like roots, her screen glowing with the draft outline, mine pulling up the data visuals. Strategy debates started civil, her pushing for a streamlined narrative, me insisting on layering in the raw metrics to back the claims. Voices stayed low at first, echoing soft off the glass walls. But as the clock pushed past 8, the edges sharpened, words landing heavier in the cooling air. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, the wood creaking under her weight. "We can't bury them in numbers," she said, her finger jabbing the screen where my charts sprawled. "The client's not here for a lecture. They want the story, the big picture." Her tone carried that steady pull, but frustration threaded through, her fingers drumming the edge of the remote. I felt the heat rise in my chest, the sidelining from the team meeting still raw, like a bruise under my ribs. "And if we skip the details, it looks like guesswork," I shot back, my voice climbing despite myself, the words tumbling faster. "Your story without proof is just smoke. We've got to show the work or they'll tear it apart." The empty floor amplified it all, our voices bouncing back from the deserted cubicles, the fluorescent strips buzzing overhead like angry hornets. She straightened, her chair scraping sharp, eyes narrowing in the projector's blue wash. The air thickened, charged with the unsaid. The politics whispering we'd both sink if this flopped, but her favored status making me feel like the one dangling. It escalated quick, like a spark catching dry grass. We circled the table, pacing now, her flipping through printouts while I yanked up another dataset on my laptop. Accusations flew then, trust fracturing under the strain. "You've been half in on this from the start," I said, the words cutting deeper than I'd meant, born from the knot of envy and fear twisting in my gut. "Ever since the boss lit up over your ideas, you've been carrying it like it's yours alone. What about the effort I've put in? The nights I stayed while you wrapped early?" Her face tightened, the color draining from her cheeks, but she fired back, voice cracking like ice under boot. "Half in? You're the one second-guessing every move, holding us back because you can't let go of being sidelined. Trust? How can I trust you when you're always waiting for me to fail?" The remote clattered to the table, her hand trembling as she gripped the chair back. It wasn't just the project, it was us. The quiet alliance splintering, words honed sharp from 5 years of bottled tension. I saw the hurt flash in her eyes, raw and unguarded, a storm front rolling in behind the steady mask she'd worn so long. She pushed back from the table, chair legs screeching against the linoleum, her breath coming short. "Forget it," she muttered, voice thick, gathering her notes in a haphazard stack. Her eyes flashed again, not anger now, but something deeper, wounded, like a ridge cracked by frost. Without another word, she stormed out, footsteps echoing down the hall toward the conference room at the far end, the doors slamming with a thud that reverberated through the empty space. I stood there, heart thudding heavy in my chest, the projector humming on, casting her abandoned slide in mocking light. Regret hit like cold water, washing over the heat of the argument. The accusations I'd hurled weren't fair, born from my own fears of losing ground, of the pull between us twisting into something I couldn't name. The office felt vast, suddenly, shadows pooling in the corners, the whispers of politics louder in the silence. I couldn't let it end like that, the alliance we'd built crumbling under one bad night. Grabbing my jacket, I followed, the carpet muffling my steps, the air stale with the scent of cooling electronics and her lingering soap. The conference room door was ajar when I reached it, a sliver of dim light spilling out. I pushed it open, the hinges whispering, and stepped in after her. She was at the far window, back to me, arms crossed tight over her chest, staring at the city lights smearing the glass. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing us in the dim space. The overheads off, only the desk lamp casting a warm pool on the table, walls soundproofed against the world outside. "Wait," I said, voice softer now, the edge gone, regret weighing each word. She didn't turn, shoulders rigid, the line of her neck taut under the faint glow. The room felt smaller, charged with the remnants of our fight, the air heavy between us like dust settling after a wind. I moved closer, stopping short of touching, the carpet thick under my shoes. I didn't mean... It came out wrong. The pressures got us both twisted. Silence stretched, broken only by the distant hum of the building's vents, her breathing uneven in the quiet. Then it broke. Her shoulders shook once, a subtle tremor, and she turned away further, one hand pressing to the window as if to steady herself. The first unraveling came quiet, a hitch in her breath that built into something raw, the sob escaping unguarded, muffled against her sleeve. It hit me then, the weight of what I'd unleashed, the cracks we'd both ignored splitting wide. She turned away sharper then, her back a straight line under the dim lamplight, but the tremor ran through her like a fault line shifting under rock. Her hand pressed harder against the window, fingers splaying white on the glass. And that's when the first sob broke free. Raw, unguarded, pulling from deep in her chest, like wind ripping through a narrow pass. It wasn't loud, not the kind that echoes, but it filled the room, hitting me square, the sound thick with everything we'd bottled up. Her shoulders shook again, harder, the fabric of her blouse pulling tight across her back, and I stood frozen for a beat, the carpet anchoring my feet, regret twisting like barbed wire in my gut. Instinct kicked in, pulling me forward before thought could catch up. The space between us shrank in 3 steps, my shoes silent on the thick weave, and I reached out, arms sliding around her waist, slow, careful, like testing a loose rail on a fence. She stiffened at first, breath hitching sharp, but then she leaned back, just enough, her weight settling against me heavy, real. I guided her to the nearest chair, the leather creaking as we sank into it together, her body folding into mine, head dropping to my shoulder with a thud that felt like surrender. The warmth of her cheek pressed through my blouse, damp already from the start of tears, and her hand clutched at my sleeve, fingers digging in like roots seeking soil. I wrapped my other arm around her, holding steady, the scent of her soap mixing with the salt of her skin, close now. Too close for colleagues. The flood came then, words tumbling out in bursts between sobs that racked her frame. I can't keep pretending it's just work, she gasped, voice muffled against my collar, tears soaking through the cotton, warm and insistent. The pressure, the boss always leaning on me, like I'm the one who has to carry it all. Fears of screwing up, of letting everyone down, especially you. Her breath hitched, body curling tighter into mine, the chair arm digging into my side, but I didn't shift. Failures spilled next, raw edges catching. The project revisions that haunted her nights, the way client calls left her doubting her own voice, the old wounds from past jobs where she'd been the one left holding the bag. I thought if I pushed harder, stayed later, it would be enough. But tonight, your words, they cut because they're true. I've been half in, scared to fail us both. Each confession landed heavy, her tears tracing hot paths down my neck, the room's quiet amplifying the hitch in her throat, the soft shudder of her ribs against my arm. I held her through it, my hand stroking slow circles on her back, feeling the rise and fall, the tension easing knot by knot under my palm. Her hair brushed my chin, strands catching on my stubble if I had any, but mostly it was the weight of her, solid and breaking all at once. The window fogged slightly from her earlier breath, city lights blurring outside like distant campfires. But in here it was just us, the lamp's glow pooling on the table, casting long shadows across the forgotten notes. She kept talking, fragments now, about the isolation of the office, how our desks felt like the only safe spot in a world of sharp edges, how my sidelining in meetings twisted her up inside, making her question if she was pulling me under too. "I see you, always have," she whispered, voice cracking. But I didn't know how to say it without everything shifting. The sobs slowed to shudders, her grip loosening but not letting go, tears still seeping, my blouse clinging damp to my skin. My own walls started crumbling then. The hold I'd kept on everything fraying like old rope under strain. I'd ignored the pull for years, that quiet ache building from coffee runs to late nights, her steady presence turning into something deeper, warmer, like sunlight breaking through canyon walls. Holding her tighter, my arm banding across her shoulders, I let it out low, voice rough against her hair. "It's not just the fight. It's you. 5 years of watching your hands on the keys, your laugh cutting the office drone, and me pretending it didn't stir something. The pull. I've buried it, scared it'd ruin what we have, this rhythm at the desks. But tonight, seeing you break, I can't ignore it anymore." The admission hung there, my heart thudding steady against her side, the truth tasting like dust after a long ride, dry, but freeing. Her body stilled, breath syncing with mine, the damp warmth of her cheek pressing closer, as if anchoring my words. We sat like that, time stretching thin in the dim room, her confessions echoing mine, the air thick with the salt of tears and the faint leather scent of the chair. The sobs had ebbed, leaving a quiet ache, her fingers tracing idle patterns on my arm now, light as breath. I felt the shift in her, the unraveling turning to something softer, her head lifting just enough to rest against my neck, the curve of her fitting against me like a puzzle slotting home. No rush to pull away, just the hold, my hand still on her back, thumb brushing the edge of her spine through the fabric. The failures we'd named hung between us, not lighter yet, but shared, the weight divided. Outside, the city murmured distant, but the conference room sealed it out, our breaths the only rhythm now, steadying together. The room felt smaller after that, walls pressing in, gentle, charged with what we'd both hidden, years of glances unspoken, touches brushed off as accident. Her hand slipped into mine, fingers lacing tight, and the lamp flickered once, shadows dancing soft on the glass. We stayed, the breakdown binding us closer, the pull no longer shadow but solid ground underfoot. She pulled back slightly then, her body shifting in the chair's creak, enough to lift her face toward mine. Her eyes met my gaze, wet and searching, the lamp's glow catching the unshed tears that rimmed them like dew on canyon grass after dawn. They held no anger now, just a raw openness, pupils wide in the dim, pulling me in like the quiet draw of a still pond. Her breath came uneven, warm against my skin, and I saw the flecks of exhaustion there, the faint lines from years of holding steady under the office weight. My thumb moved without thinking, brushing a stray tear from her cheek, the track it left cool under my touch. Her skin was soft, warmer than I'd imagined in all those sidelong glances, and she leaned into it, just a fraction, eyelids fluttering closed for a beat. That touch turned the unspoken words between us, shifting from air to something solid, my hands cupping her cheek fully now, fingers splaying gentle against the curve of her jaw. The salt lingered on my skin, faint and real, mixing with the clean trace of her soap that still clung despite the tears. She opened her eyes again, holding mine steady, and the room narrowed further, the conference table's edge forgotten in the shadows, papers scattered like fallen leaves after a gust. My heart thudded low, a steady drum against my ribs, echoing the pull I'd felt building for months. Her hand steady on a mug, her laugh cutting through the hum of keyboards. "I've wanted this," I whispered, voice rough from the night's strain, the admission slipping out like breath after holding it too long. You, us. Not just desks and deadlines, but more. The way you've been there, steady. It's pulled at me until I couldn't see straight. Her whisper came back, mirroring my ache, soft as wind through dry reeds. Me too. For years, watching you across that desk, your focus pulling me in like nothing else. I hid it, scared it'd break what we had. The rhythm, the quiet alliance. Her words landed heavy, her free hand rising to cover mine on her cheek, fingers pressing my palm closer, the warmth spreading like sunlight breaking cold. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, forehead resting against mine, breaths mingling in the small space, her lashes brushing my skin. The mutual admission hung there, no rush to fill it, just the truth, settling like dust after a ride, clear and unyielding. I'd felt her quiet strength in every shared task, every late-night revision, and now it wrapped around us. The ache we'd both carried turning to something shared, lighter in the telling. Time stretched thin after that, the clock's tick lost in the aftershock, the conference table a distant shape under the lamp's fading pool. Just the two of us now, bodies close in the chair, her head tilting to rest against my shoulder again, but softer this time. No sobs, just the rise and fall of her breathing, syncing with mine. The city outside blurred through the window, lights smearing like distant ridges at dusk. But in here, the world sealed out, leaving only the press of her against me, the faint scent of her hair, something herbal, like sage after rain, filling the air. My arm stayed around her, hand drifting to trace the line of her arm, feeling the subtle shift of muscle under fabric, the tension easing into quiet hold. We didn't speak more. Words weren't needed. The touch saying it all. The long-held feelings uncoiling, mirroring each other in the dim. Her fingers squeezed mine, lacing tighter, and I felt the shift deep, like ground settling after quake, solid now where cracks had run. The lamp hummed low, casting our shadows long across the floor, blending at the edges where we touched. Minutes blurred, or maybe hours. The aftershock wrapped us, her cheek warm on my neck, my thumb still brushing idle patterns on her hand. No hurry to move, the forgotten notes on the table curling at the edges from the room's chill. But we stayed warm in the hold, the revelation binding tighter than any deadline. Her breath evened, a soft sigh escaping, and I pressed my lips to her temple, light, testing, the taste of salt and skin grounding me further. It was us, finally, the pull no longer hidden but alive, pulsing in the quiet. Morning light filtered in slow, gray at first through the blinds, pulling us back to the world outside. The conference room brightened, edges sharpening on the table, the scattered papers a reminder of the fight that led here. We straightened, her pulling back with a small smile, eyes still holding mine, changed now, deeper, laced with promise. The desks waited down the hall, routine calling, but we rose together, hands brushing as we gathered our things, the air lighter, altered. No words yet for the office hum, but the change stuck, like boot prints in fresh mud, marking the path forward. We stepped back into the office hum Monday morning, the fluorescent lights buzzing like cicadas after rain. But everything felt altered, like the air had cleared after a dust storm. Our desks waited, screens dark and inboxes blinking with weekend backlog. But the space between them seemed smaller, charged with the promise we'd uncovered in the conference room. I arrived first, coffee in hand, the cardboard warm against my palm. And when she walked in, steps measured, bag slung over her shoulder, our eyes met across the divide. No quick nod this time. Her glance lingered, laced with a quiet heat, the corner of her mouth lifting in a way that pulled at me, steady as sunlight breaking through blinds. She settled into her chair, the wheels humming soft, and we dove into the routine, sorting emails, syncing files. But each look carried weight, her focus on the screen shifting to me mid-sentence, eyes holding like she was mapping new terrain. The office resumed its rhythm, keyboards clacking in waves from the cubicles, phones trilling distant. But our corner shifted subtle, hands brushing deliberately now as we reached for the shared mouse. Once, passing a report, her fingers trailed mine longer than needed, the paper crinkling under the touch, warmth seeping through like ground thawing after frost. Notes she left changed too, her handwriting looping warmer. Colonel C. fixed. Lunch? Tucked under my keyboard, the ink carrying hidden heat, a code only we read. We'd lean in over revisions, shoulders aligning without excuse, her breath close as she pointed to a cell, the scent of her soap cutting the printer haze sharper, grounding me amid the grind. Colleagues milled past, oblivious, their chatter about weekend hikes or family barbecues fading to background. But in those brushes, the world narrowed to us, the pull solid now, no longer shadow. Lunch came quiet that day, the break room emptying as we grabbed sandwiches from the deli cart outside, retreating to a corner table away from the windows. The city noise filtered in, horns blaring like distant thunder, but under the table, her hand found mine, fingers lacing firm, thumb tracing the ridge of my knuckle, slow, deliberate. We planned beyond work then, voices low over the bread crusts, her suggesting a trail up the nearby ridge after hours, away from the concrete sprawl. Just us, she said, eyes steady, the confirmation solidifying like posts set deep in soil. No more desks and deadlines alone. This was weekends mapped together. Her apartment for coffee that stretched into evenings, hands free of files. The touch anchored it, her palm warm against mine, the salt of the sandwich forgotten as we sketched the shift. Dinners at quiet spots off the main drag, walks where the city edged into green. It felt real, the plan weaving our routines into something deeper, her squeeze saying we'd face the hours together. No more unspoken ache. Facing the world built slow. Nods to colleagues, carrying our secret like a shared load that lightened the step. The boss called a quick huddle that afternoon, chairs scraping around the central table, his voice droning on metrics and morale. We sat side by side, knees brushing under the wood, her presence steady as I fielded a question on the project wrap-up. Eyes flicked our way, but nothing showed. The polite smiles, the even tones. But underneath, resilience grew. Our alliance fortified against the whispers that still slithered through the halls. Rumors of shifts lingered, but with her hand grazing mine later at the copier, the paper jam forgotten in the spark, it didn't touch us the same. We'd trade glances during the drone, her foot nudging mine subtle, a reminder of the conference room hold, building walls higher around what we'd claimed. The office felt less like a box, more like a path we walked tandem, the secret binding us tighter, turning potential cracks into shared ground. That resilience carried through the week, the emotional payoff hitting full as evenings wound down. We'd linger after the last colleague left, packing bags slow, her leaning against the desk edge while I shut down the screen, the glow fading to dark. One night, walking out together, the elevator dinged open, but we took the stairs instead. Steps sinking on the concrete, her hand slipping into mine at the door. The city air hit lighter, cooler with the promise of open sky beyond the buildings, streetlights pooling like campfires along the sidewalk. We paused at the corner, her profile sharp against the dusk, eyes turning to mine with that quiet pull, the possibility stretching out like horizon after rain. Dinners, trails, mornings without the desk divide. It was us now, confirmed in every brush, every plan. The 5 years of side-by-side turning to something unbreakable. The world wider with her beside me. Her profile caught the elevator light as we descended, hand squeezing mine firm, a quiet anchor in the hum. If this quiet shift echoes your own, share below. Subscribe for more stories of finding connection.